I am so excited and blessed today to be with three amazing queens. And we are going to start with introductions, and we're going to start with Dr. Maxine Mims. Would you share a little bit about who you are?
Well, I really basically don't know who I am, thank goodness. As an elder, I need to be able to have that flexibility and it, allow my imagination to create on a daily basis. But on today, who I am is a person that's very happy to be here and very honored to have been asked.
Oh, we adore you. They asked me to do this in the order of seniority. So I'm going to the
Age.
beautiful age. Thank you very much. So I'm going to the beautiful Dr. Joy Hardiman. How are you?
I am perfectly fine. And in keeping in the thread of Maxine's rhythm, who I am today is the former executive director of the Evergreen State College Tacoma campus. I was the executive director for over 20 years, and it warms my heart to have been able to participate in such a marvelous movement that was in fact started by Dr. Maxine Mims in her brilliance as part of her doctoral work into what were the best educational models and pedagogies for urban Black adults. And so she was the founder, and I was lucky enough to be the heir apparent. And so I did that work for 20 years. I'm currently the founder of Hardiman House. And Hardiman House is an urban sanctuary that is the home of ancestral artworks. And Ancestral Artworks is a creative production institute that uses ancient wisdoms to solve contemporary situations and encourages people to raw image their life and not and to be verbs and not nouns. And I am the author of the Resurrection of Truth from the Chains of Falsehood. That is my definition as of today.
As of today, y'all, we are so honored to have each of you. Each of you are just a national treasure trove of amazingness. So I am just so thrilled. Thank you for that, Dr. Joy. Dr. Arunga, how are you?
I'm well, Tracy. Thank you for having me. It is definitely, I am so junior to these amazing icons here. You know, Dr. Mims, who is the founder of Evergreen State College, Tacoma, and her successor, Dr. Hardiman, both of who have been my mentors for quite a long time. But Dr. Hardiman picked me up one day at the University of Washington campus, and we began a dialogue that has not ended. And so I am so honored to say that today I am the Dean of Evergreen State College, Tacoma, and I am really just continuing the legacy of Dr. Mims and Dr. Hardiman, trying to really celebrate the idea that this is a historically community-driven institution that was meant for the urban Black student, and to really carry that out so that Black and Brown people know they have a beacon in the hilltop of Tacoma where they can be educated and receive their BA degrees and some really important life direction. So I'm very honored for that. But in my normal life, for several decades now, I will say that I have been a cultural custodian. And that begins with my time as a student activist and a theater person. When I became on the stage, a lot of my work was done in terms of using the stage as a message for the community to understand our history, understand our culture. And so I have been doing that for some time now. And I am so honored to really bring all of that together at Evergreen. My artistry as a designer, as a stage person, all come together now at Evergreen. And it's a place of belonging for Black and Brown adult learners who have for so long been marginalized in our communities in this country. And so this is really a empowering place to be, where I can invite students to come here and be a part of this important educational institution.
I love that so much. I love everything about each of you. It is truly my honor to be leading this conversation. And just to be clear, this is a conversation. Imagine us sitting around, if we could be together and we're sipping on some tea and we're having a conversation. You all look amazing, by the way. So we're bringing this to the inaugural Juneteenth Royal Ball. And I said, can we get dolled up? And I realized y'all look dolled up every day. You ladies look beautiful all the time. This is your regular beauty. But tell us a little bit about this idea of this being a Juneteenth Royal Ball. Let's talk a little bit about Juneteenth. Some people in this audience have never heard of just learning about Juneteenth. Other people have been, celebrating it for years, for decades. What are your thoughts about Juneteenth, and why is it important that we as a community celebrate?
For me personally, you have to understand how many systems have been built and designed to keep us struggling to be together. Juneteenth is a very excellent example of that. To delay the time that you announce a concept, not the action, but you announce the concept of freedom, to delay that because of skin coloring is just obscene and vulgar. And as long as I'm alive, I want to be a part. I feel so happy to be in a state that recognizes that this is a national holiday, because it's absolutely happening now. Juneteenth is really happening today. All of these young KKK, I'm from the generation where the KKK did wear a hood. The boldness has occurred now that they're not even wearing the hood. They're so bold now in terms of dividing us and killing us that we've got to look at the symbols that allows us to say Juneteenth is important. It's important because it forces Dr. Hardiman, Dr. Arunga, Dr. Mims to talk together to our community. That's why I take the time on a Wednesday to be here. Listening to Joy and Marsha just thrills me. It just thrills me to have lived this long to hear them talking about Juneteenth. I never thought I would live to see that as a holiday. I participated, but I participated as a ritual, not as something going into my heart. I now sort of feel like it's getting closer and closer into my heart. And it's very important to me just to be alive and to experience the dialogue.
I love that. Thank you so much. Either of you have any thoughts about Juneteenth?
When I think about Juneteenth, which is just technically the second year of Emancipation Proclamation, when the people actually got on ships, boats, and sailed from Virginia all the way around to Galveston, Texas, to announce that Emancipation Proclamation had occurred and that people were actually free. This was 2 years after Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation.
The delay.
And it was heavily delayed, and it was only announced in a few places like Galveston, Texas. Most of the states in the United States were not informed and were not included in that because of the Civil War. But I think that one of the things that has amused me in the past decade, because we are celebrating Juneteenth more and more, and now it is national, but I worry about the word celebration. I think that we need to call this a commemoration, not a celebration. A celebration would imply that we were indeed made free and that we have been experiencing freedom ever since. And the truth is, we are still not free.
Right.
You know, Fannie Lou Hamer says, until all of us are free, none of us are free. And so I really want us to see Juneteenth, now that it is a national holiday, kind of like we see Martin Luther King Day, a day for working for social justice, but even more so, a day for us to learn our history and understand what Juneteenth stood for and what more has to be done so that we can really actualize Juneteenth in this country. And I'm just so proud to be an African American, a Black woman in the United States, because these are the milestones of our country that actually mark our humanity. There was a time when Black people were not even considered fully human. Can you imagine that? And that Emancipation Proclamation was actually the beginning of suggesting that maybe we had been off track by saying not fully human, that in fact we were fully human beings. And as a people, I am very proud that we have kept the United States of America to the coals and to the fire, to always understand that we have to push, struggle, work, interrogate what it is to be free in the United States of America. And it is African Americans who push that envelope, always have and always will. And for that reason, I'm very proud, but I don't think it should be a celebration. I believe it is a commemoration.
Right, I like that.
I love that.
I like that.
I
like
love that.
like that. And I'm going to just take it into a whole another place in some way, because I want to globalize it. I want to say that, first of all, I love Juneteenth because anytime Black people can get together to celebrate ourselves, our history, our humanity, our skin, our noses, our hair, our family, our swag, anytime we can get together, I am excited about it. So I like Juneteenth for that reason. But what I also thinking about Juneteenth, because of my research, is that Juneteenth is it needs to commemorate, and I like what Marcia says, not just the U.S. struggle for liberation and freedom, but the global struggle for U.S. For freedom. And so I think that basically it's a time to discover not just those ancestors that waited, but those ancestors that also ran away, the Maroon community. I just got back from Palenque, and Palenque is the oldest Black free community in the Americas, 1600. And it reminded me that for
Where is it? Where is it?
It's in Colombia. It's in Colombia, South America, which was a port by which 1 million enslaved Black people went through the port of Cartagena. And as soon as they went through it, they immediately fought for their freedom. And they didn't wait to be emancipated. They ran to the hills and they established communities, and they had people who gathered, and they were so bad that the Spanish finally made a deal with them and said, listen, we'll leave you alone if you promise not to keep coming back and raiding our houses and giving people freedom. And so that was something that they did. And how it ties into Juneteenth is that I think it's really important for me as a Black person to understand that the fight for freedom has been global. It's been in the US, it's been in Haiti, it's been in Brazil, it's been in Cuba, it's been throughout the Caribbean. And that Juneteenth then becomes just one more indication that our ancestors did not design for us to be enslaved, that our ancestors designed us to be free. And even though they tried against all odds, they tried to delay it on Juneteenth. They tried not to tell us the truth, but the truth always reveals itself, because we are people who take as our total destiny self-liberation, community liberation, and freedom. So for Juneteenth, for me, is a chance not just to celebrate the news that some white boy came and decided they were going to free us, but a chance to discuss, to celebrate all of the freedom efforts that we took to free ourselves, whether it was mentally, physically, and that it was globally, and that it is eternally. So Juneteenth says to me, I give all praises to my ancestors in Texas, but I also give all praises to my ancestors in the South Carolinas, the Gullah Geechees, the Maroon communities, this is an opportunity to celebrate that. So that's what it means for me.
I love that. I love that so much. Now, there's a bit of a theme that I heard from each of you, and this concept of community keeps coming up when we think about Juneteenth. This idea, the importance of us coming together as community. You have to be very intentional about that. So would you share anything? What would you like to share about how important it is not to wait till next Juneteenth or the next holiday, but to create community in a very intentional and organic way on a very regular basis? That's about community and how we thrive in community.
If you actually understand the Sankofa, the ancestors knew that someday a Tracy, a Joy, and a Marsha, you were prayed for, that you would come along and be able to give us the definition. We're not able to do anything until we understand what the vocabulary is. For instance, we always say blah, 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 and they were slaves, or blah, blah, blah. We'll say it ourselves. No, we were enslaved. It takes a while to get to the vocabulary to even understand who we are. We were enslaved. Once you understand you were enslaved, then you would understand the structures and the systems that kept you trying to do without. But the ancestors did, they prayed for Marsha, and they still are. So you've been paid for. What you need to do now is exactly what you see you all are doing. You're bringing that vocabulary and you're turning all of those prayers into action. That's what the Juneteenth is doing. If the Sankofa finally is flying, he finally twisted that neck around and says, I'm going to touch Marsha, I'm going to touch Maxine, I'm going to touch Joy, I'm going to touch Tracy.
I love that. Now,
So
at this point,
Sankofa has become an active verb.
I love it. Now, I got my education from Dr. Joy about a year ago, but some people are hearing the term Sankofa for the first time. And so we're going to show a little image and some various images of what Sankofas are, but who would like to define the term Sankofa for this community?
So Sankofa is a bird. It's a legendary bird of the Akan people in West Africa. So when it flies forward, the neck is always turned around, as Dr. Mims has said. And the parable that goes with the Sandinka symbols, and this is just one of many Andinka symbols, is that in order for you to know where you are going, you first need to know where you have come from. And this has been a very important bird in our history as in the United States. Many African-American communities have adopted this bird because we were told to forget about the past. And in this country, that has really served to enslave us because the less you know about your past, the more you cling to your oppressor and you want to be more like them because you think you don't have a worthy history. One of the things I always think of around community, and I just imagine the Sankofa bird flying with all those ships in the waters, getting us to our next destination. And when we were in those ships, we were the only people in those ships, men and women, young and old, fat and skinny, but Black. Okay, Black people coming from Africa. We're in those ships and we had to figure out together how to survive. We had to know how to live among our feces, give birth, eat trashy food that wasn't even healthy food, and watch half of the people in the ship be thrown overboard due to sickness and disease. And we learned there how to use the spiritual strength that we had come to know. We understood what it was to sing, to pray, to cry, to do everything we had to do to survive that horrible, filthy voyage into the Americas. So I think that when we talk about community, we know what it is to be together under horrific conditions. That's what our people have known. And because of that, we can find community when we need to at any time. And I think that is the greatest strength of our people, is that we lean onto community. We know we need each other. And we celebrate each other just by the nodding of our head, just by acknowledging each other in the grocery store, saying, how you doing today, is an acknowledgement that when we were in those ships, we survived it because of each other. And that we owe it to each other to honor each other when we see ourselves.
Right. Yes, and Marcia mentioned about we survived because of the intelligence, the emotional, the DNA and stuff like that. And that's also, if you know, the Sankofa has two symbols. There's one symbol of the bird that says, go back and fetch it. You can't move forward. But the other symbol of the Sankofa is a heart. And you see them together. And the heart symbol and the bird symbol is Ghanaian. The heart symbol goes all the way back to our ancestors of the Green Sahara. This symbol for African people existed before the Sahara was a desert, in the very beginning. So what Sankofa, so when they put the symbols next to each other, what Sankofa is saying, go back and fetch it. But go back and fetch it. But what is the it? The it is the intelligence of the heart. The it is the birth of the divine mother. The it is not a cognitive Western diunital kind of adversarial stuff. It's going back to the wholeness. That's what that egg is saying right there. This is the wholeness of the heart. A heart. This contains life, just like the Ankh. It has the male principle. It has the female principle. It has the ancestors whose roots we have on. It's the children who are in the womb, all to be born. So the Sankofa is very clear about what we are to do. We are to go back and fetch it. And what we have to fetch it is the divine heart, the divine womb. And in that we are whole, we are constantly creative, and we can survive totally against all odds. No weapon formed against us can hurt us as long as we Sankofa, which is why that's the emblem of the Evergreen State College, is Sankofa.
The thing you have to remember though, and what I don't want a community to get lost on, that the Sankofa is physical. Going back and fetching it means to leave the external and make sure you go inside to discover the self. You cannot do with any of this. You cannot acknowledge history or anything until you go inside yourself. And the first thing that you've got to say is, I must acknowledge two B's, beauty and brilliance. When you put those two things together and go inside, there's nobody that can touch your power. I am brilliant and I'm beautiful. And then, you become your own internal. And when you talk about the egg, if you turn that upside down, let me show you something, George. Turn your symbol back up. Yeah. See the bird? The bird is there at the bottom. The heart. So the Sankofa and the heart, all that is totally together.
It's the same. Hold yours back up again.
Go inside. If you stay outside, you will give the power to the pale people. You change the name in your own being of white and start using the word pale. Once you use the word pale, then you are acknowledging the Sankofa. You can't keep looking at these symbols and not acknowledging them. That Sankofa has to get inside of you. It just can't be out here Juneteenth. We want to commemorate these things, but you have to internalize that so that your imagination can grow with that intellect and the power comes all to you.
I love it. I love it so much. Thank you, ladies, so much. I knew y'all had some Sankofa symbols somewhere in here, right? Right at hand.
Houses.
Exactly.
You could never have a Tacoma campus without having all those. Joy had 35 of them to sell. She made you get them when you walked through the door. Marsha had them at seaweed.
I love it. I'm absolutely going to make that one of the things that I bring physically into my house. It's going to be sitting right there as a
You
reminder.
have to be sure you want it in your house,
Tell me more. Of course I do, but tell me why you say that.
because I just said you have to internalize as you hear about symbols and you hear us talk about the philosophy of the theory of symbols. You have to internalize their purpose.
Mm,
You
right.
can't walk around talking about unapologetically Black. I did it intentionally. All the language that can colonize you if you're not careful. If you don't internalize, the language will colonize you because you will only accept the external nature of it. So your truth becomes your own lie. You can lie to yourself if you stay in the external world.
Mhm.
I love that. That is so beautiful. That
Right.
is just, you ladies are just fantastic. And I hope as those of us who are attending this royal ball, think about Juneteenth and think about Sankofa and think about culture, right? We said we're going to dress in our African best, right? We were going to show up, coming to America, Wakanda style, just showing up, trying desperately, honestly, to
Not
reconnect.
desperately, never desperately. No, I watched.
Let me use a different word. Trying intentionally.
If we were coming
Intentionally.
enslaved, we retained our royalty on the ship.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah, they thought they put us in feces and gave us rotten food, but now we have restaurants that have gourmet chitlins.
Truly.
Right, right. And I think it's really important. And I want to expand the term royalty, because it wasn't just we are exceptional, not just because some of us were royal, but because all of us, because it was and Marsh and Dr. Tate got me to understand that this was a slave trade. In other words, it was this trade. So they had to get those of us who were the highest price. So they had to get those of us who were skilled. They had to get those of us who were master masons and master iron builders and master agronomists and master navigators. They didn't, because it was about price. You got the best so you could get the highest price. So they didn't bring no okie doke over here. It was financially not worth the thing. They went and they got people who had skills, who had knowledge, and who were beautiful and who were brilliant. And I think that that's what we are celebrating.
It's happening right now in America. Every healer in America right now is a Black woman. Every last one of them. Our stories are coming out. Yes. Black women, our music, on and on and on. Our deans, all of them. And the white deans are going crazy.
I so love that you say that that Black women are royal, and thank you for that. Today, when I just left a program introducing and shouting out Evergreen State College, the person after that came after me, the MC, said, "Thank you for the established matriarchy of Evergreen State College." And I think that must be referring to Dr. Mims, Dr. Hardiman, and now me. And I was so honored by that. But if you understand womanism, because that's what we really are doing. We're not leaving the men behind. We would never leave the men behind. That would be a civilization that would be very boring. But we understand the leadership of women and the role of women in leadership and in change. And so this is befitting that we would be sitting here together talking about Juneteenth, at this time as women. But I want to honor the men as well, and always keep in mind that we don't go alone. We don't go without the men. The men have a role as well. But
we invite the seed, and that's the brilliance.
What?
That we invite the seed. When that semen goes in, that egg invites. It doesn't float all around and find the egg. That one is able to say, you, right.
And And that's why this heart symbol is a symbol in the green Sahara of the divine feminine.
Right.
Of Bat, B-A-T. You see her, the goddess with her hands like this, and her bottom as a tree trunk rooting, and she was the origin of this.
Right.
So it's all quite marvelous and
wonderful.
And we just need to celebrate. I know we're using royalty, but I'd like to, seeing that we're playing with words today, I'd like to substitute the word elegance. You know, we're having a royal ball because we're an elegant people. You know, we don't do anything unelegantly. I mean, really comes down to it. So and they try to reduce us and try to shrink us. And we must never shrink. We must never allow that to be. We cannot diminutize ourselves. I'm working hard on eradicating the words little and just from my vocabulary.
Right.
Nothing is little. Nothing I do is just. Everything I do is elegant and spectacular. Everything I do is you know.
And once you see that in yourself, it's impossible. I don't see any people that need special ed, the kind that they're using. Everybody needs special ed. Everybody is brilliant. I do that deliberately because I have to maintain what I see so that I can feed myself and say, that's what I'm surrounded by. I have to know that as an educator, I have to know that everybody I run into is brilliant. I mean, if I start judging, then I'm talking about myself. If you go internal, there's a lot of power you have. If you stay out there waiting for the compliment, it's over. You cannot do Sankofa. You know, I have to think of Sankofa, but I also have to think of the crow. I won't see Sankofa, but when I see that crow, I have to say, look at Sankofa up on that thing. That crow makes a lot of noise. I don't hear the Sankofa, but I hear that black crow. And that must be Sankofa. Must be. There's so many of them.
You know what I love about you all? So if you hold that statue up, Dr. Marsha Arunga, one more time. So you using this term Sankofa as a verb, like it is a symbol as well, but it's an activation. This is about a doing. So Dr. Maxine, when you talk about going inside, you're basically saying, hey, it's not a thing. It is an action. It is an activation.
Not with me. You have to, when Maxine Mims gets ready to retire, before she retires, she has to start early looking for Joy Hardiman. Early. I cannot believe that some white person is going to follow me on an urban campus. And you just keep doing it. You find joy. I don't care what you do. You look for joy. And then now I look for Marsha's daughter. I look for Joy's daughter, and it's my role to skip. I know they're doing okay. I'm pleased. But now I've got to go to Selma and Geneva and bring them in.
Right.
I have to tell them you're little Maxines, and then they go out. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. And you have to see brilliance and elegance in everybody.
So now, since you're talking about brilliance and excellence, yes.
Maxine saw me as soon as she started. I saw Marsha, and I said, that's the person who could step in my footsteps.
That's right.
Campus, you know, and Marsha isn't, as soon as she's gotten this job, is now thinking about who she's gonna get to start working on right now.
Evergreen State College over the weekend ran the graduation thing with two of their ex-directors. One old ain't going out. When Joy said she had COVID, I thought I could get it from Joy in Columbia. So I wasn't going to go around that. I don't have to try to understand everything. I just said, Joy's got it. And I know she'll stay away from me and I'll stay with her. So the campus was run by somebody that Marsha trusted to do. The graduation on a street where there was prostitution, it's run by, the graduation was run by a student. Marsha's daughter was a graduation speaker one year.
I love it.
Joy's daughter is doing all the creative stuff that Joy could not do because of physical constraints, but it wasn't for her to do.
Yes.
It had nothing. What Selma is doing is what the college need. That Selma and Geneva. This is the mobile campus that we wanted to see.
You're talking about this. You're talking about this multi-generational engagement as well. I love that. I love that. So in this room, we were being very intentional about making sure we had elders in the room, but also have youth, right? It's so important that we connect.
And someday when you want to, I will be glad to talk to you about what is happening in the Black community with the elders.
I would love to. We would definitely bring you all back for sure.
Be careful telling Sankofa to go back. And Sankofa finds neglect. Be careful.
Right.
I love that.
Because the ancestors don't play. If you say you're going to walk the walk, they really, if you're going to talk the talk, they really want you to walk the walk.
That's right.
You know, I said you had to make lemons out of lemonade. That was rhetorical. The last 6 months, the ancestors have been throwing me some lemons. They've been throwing me down holes, cutting my face. They've been airplanes for 56 hours when I trying to get home. They gave me COVID for my birthday, and they said, you know, make lemons out of lemonade. You put your money where your mouth is. You internalize this stuff. You just can't talk it. Can you turn challenges?
And you're in much more dangerous thing. You were bolder than I was. You put your stuff in writing. The ancestors are going to kick your behind because you know. Because you're all talking about, Dr. Mims wants you to write. I ain't gonna write nothing and confess to them. You confess. And anytime you write a book,
you put it all out there. So ladies, I know
you can come to my house. I ain't
you put it in writing. So ladies, when you think about going back in time, if we had to ask you to roll back in history and think back to telling yourself or asking yourself, providing yourself at the age of 20 with some wisdom, what would be that word of wisdom that you would share with your 20-year-old self? Something that you know now that you wish you knew then. What would you share? I'll start with you, Dr. Mims.
Oh, imagination and magic. That's what I live. Yeah.
Nice.
And I was doing Once Upon a Time. I just worked with that. And Joy said, I think it's to be real, you have to even go before Once Upon a Time. Before Once Upon a Time. That's really bringing in a whole heat.
Yes, I love it. Dr. Marsha Arunga, what would you tell your younger self? What do you know now? Some word of wisdom that you wish you knew then?
I might stick with the fact that everything occurs in cycles, that in fact, generationality is critical, very important, that if it didn't come in this generation, it may come stronger in the next generation, and perhaps it'll be even more excellent by the next generation. So we have to keep persevering, that actually progress occurs. And we are made better because we stay on the track of improving ourselves and fully realizing our humanity.
I love it. Ladies, I know we're short on time. So any final words you want to share?
All right, let me add what I would say to myself.
For sure.
That's okay. I already said one of the things I would say to myself is don't shrink. You know, don't make yourself less than. Always understand your magnificentness. But the other thing I would always say is don't get lost hanging up on the one thing, on the one person that says something bad about you, that you miss the 8 other people who are saying good things about you. I think that's really important. I think we focus on the one thing, the one man that didn't speak to us when we was walking down the street, and we forget the 8 men who are around us, helping us with our car, wondering about whether our roof is okay, trying to make sure, you know, that we get to where we have to go. We disregard all the good things that are happening because we focus on the wrong things. So I that's one of the things I tell my younger child is to, hey, look around you and see the abundance that you have. Focus on the abundance. Don't focus on the on scarcity.
I love it. Now, part of this, obviously, this panel was meant to be a community conversation. You guys have dropped some pearls of wisdom today, and I'm excited to hear how the community is going to respond. Dr. Joy, your book that's behind you, The Resurrection of Truth from the Chains of Falsehood, you know, that's a whole session in itself. We should have a whole follow-up conversation on that in itself. But is there anything you want to talk about, any of you want to talk about as it relates to truth and falsehoods, right? We're here as a part of a community together. Do you have any questions or any comments that you'd like to share about the concept of truth and falsehoods as we close this panel discussion for today?
I might say that we compromise truth regularly. When we say we may not want to tell the whole truth about that we see because we have fear. Sometimes we don't have enough courage or bravery to step up to truth. And so we try to kind of pat it down and so forth. I believe that we have to be bold truth seekers and bold truth speakers. Thank you.
Y'all heard it here today, bold truth seekers and bold truth speakers. I love that. That's a word right there. We could drop the mic on that. But would you have anything else to share, Dr. Joy?
Well, I was going to say, and what Dr. Mims talked about was the fact that the journey for truth is internal. Is really one of the major points of the book, is that after falsehood throws truth into a hole and puts on truth's clothes and starts walking through the world, and the world turns upside down and the big lie becomes dominant, and the people become small, and they pray to the ancestors. And the ancestors come, and the ancestors tell them that they can bring truth back in the world, but it has to start with themselves. They have to go through and they have to get rid of the deprogramming. They have to get rid of all the lies that we tell ourselves, that we carry in our minds. And the only way and only once when we can find our internal truths and reprogram ourselves, can we then go into common union, which is community, community. And then we can together, in terms of the community, in terms of the diversity and the dialectics and stuff, regain and put truth back into the world. But when you put truth back into the world, it's not just putting it back, because falsehood is always there, always waiting, to grab truth again. And so you've got to maintain yourself, and you can maintain yourself by being the both end, but both the internal affirmation and the external action. So it's we got to bring truth back. But what the book also talks about is strategies to keep it. How do we become indigestible while we're in the belly of this beast? How do we do this work, our activism, and not reduce ourselves and not kill ourselves and not get cancer?
How do we become indigestible? We can't become indigestible in the belly of the beast by using our homemade seasoning. You can't go to the store and reach up and find a season made by somebody else. And you have to look at the season and see if your ancestors were involved. That's why we use a lot of pepper. I'm from the South. That's why we use the magic. That's why we use the garden. The season of the garden, the season of our own homegrown medicine, the season of our spirituality. That's a different type of seasoning. That's how you work with the belly of the beast. If you're going to keep using somebody else's seasoning from an external perspective, you'll always be participating in a lie.
Wow. Ladies, this has been absolutely amazing. As we close, are there any final words you want to share with this community that is here celebrating Juneteenth, and they will hear your voices? Any action-oriented, what would be the one thing you want people to remember or take away from this session? Dr.
As always, I'm glad to be around Joy and Marcia. I'm just always glad. They give me, I can go back over here and fall asleep or think about what they said and try to internalize that vocabulary. I spend a lot of time making sure a lot of my stuff comes from inside. That's the only way I've been able to live. Born in the South and living to be 94, it's hell. But the joy. Now, I don't look for happiness. I participate in joy, and there's a big difference.
Wow, I love that's deep. I don't look for happiness. I participate in joy.
Right.
Wow. You ladies are just, I'm gonna be watching this recording over and over just to pull the depth of everything I heard. Wow. Dr. Marsha Arunga, any final words, any action-oriented last words you'd like to share with this group?
Well, I would have to say, keep hope alive. I believe that's what happened when Emancipation Proclamation was signed on that fateful day. It was people, Black people, who were keeping hope alive. Some people said, oh, slavery is never going to end in this country. And there were some people who said, oh, yes, it will. Even in my lifetime, I believe it will end. And it ended. So I think that we, too, must keep hope alive, because reparations are due. We have a lot of things that are due to us. And living a higher quality of life in this country is not just due to some of us. It's due for all of us. So keep hope alive.
I love that. Dr. Joy, final words are going to go to you.
Okay, I think my final words have to be about keep hope alive and keep fighting for liberation, for self-liberation, and for community freedom. Freedom of the mind, freedom of the spirit. I like what Dr. Mims said. We have to internalize, otherwise we'll be colonized. You know,
Right.
so that's the word. You know, and then commit ourselves every day as Black people to Queen Hatshepsut's dictate, which was, I take as my sacred duty to restore that which is in ruin, and make it more beautiful than before. And she wasn't talking about donuts. She was talking about Black people, Black civilization, Black family, Black community. Make it more beautiful than before. And that, you know, ashe, ashe, ashe.
Oh, Shay, thank you so much. Our sacred duties, y'all. You heard it here. Thank you, ladies. Peace and love. Thank you.